My father didn't hesitate. He stood up in front of everyone at the family reunion and said, "I'm proud of all my children. Pause. Except the loser." 43 people went silent. Not shocked silence, uncomfortable silence. The kind where everyone understands exactly who he means, but no one wants to be the first to look. I was standing 3 steps away from him. July 17th, 2023, 3:42 p.m. My aunt's backyard, a rented tent. 2 long tables, 1 microphone someone had set up for speeches. My dad had asked for that microphone. That's what still gets me. He didn't say it in passing. He didn't whisper it to someone nearby. He made sure everyone heard. "I raised winners," he continued, gripping the mic. "Doctors, engineers, people who actually did something with their lives." A few people shifted their weight. Someone's phone screen went dark. Then he smiled. And then there's the one who didn't. This time he looked straight at me. No confusion, no ambiguity. Me. 32 years old, he said. Still hasn't figured it out. Still floating. Still depending on everyone else. That part wasn't true. But truth had never been the point. Laughter tried to start. It died immediately. I scanned the crowd without moving my head. My mother stared at the table. My older brother kept his eyes forward like this wasn't happening. My cousins avoided me completely. No one interrupted him. My father took that as permission. "You know," he added, tapping the mic, "every family has one. The one you don't brag about. The one you hope figures it out eventually." He shrugged. "Guess that's just how life works." The word loser hadn't even faded yet, and he was already piling on. I noticed things I'd never noticed before. How confident he sounded. How relaxed his shoulders were. How comfortable he was humiliating me publicly. This wasn't anger. This was practice. He'd been waiting for a moment like this. I felt eyes flick toward me, then away. A few people looked genuinely pained. Most looked relieved it wasn't them. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't react. That bothered him. "So," he said, forcing a laugh, "maybe this'll be the motivation you need." He raised his bottle. "To the rest of my kids," he said. "The ones who made me proud." Someone clapped once. Immediately stopped. The sound echoed longer than it should have. My chest felt hollow. Not broken, hollow. Because in that moment, something settled into place. This wasn't about embarrassment anymore. He wanted me small. He wanted witnesses. He wanted it recorded in memory. And I realized something else too. He assumed I had nothing. No proof. No leverage. No voice. He assumed I'd do what I'd always done. Stand there. Absorb it. Carry it quietly. I reached into my pocket and felt the edge of the folder I'd brought with me. I hadn't planned to use it that day. Not like this, but as my father lowered the microphone, satisfied, and the crowd waited for the moment to pass, I finally understood why my grandmother was already on her feet, why her hands were shaking, and why she was staring at my father, like she was seeing him, clearly for the first time in decades. She opened her mouth to speak, and that was the moment I decided I wasn't walking away this time. Before that afternoon, my life was quiet. Not dramatic quiet, not sad quiet, functional quiet. I lived alone in a 1-bedroom apartment on the east side of the city. 3rd floor. No elevator. Rent paid on time every month. Same routine most days. Up at 6:10 a.m., coffee, shower, laptop. Open by 7 now. I worked remotely. Project-based contracts. Not flashy work, but steady. My income didn't come in neat monthly paychecks, but it came in. I tracked everything. Taxes filed early every year. No debt except a car loan I was halfway through paying off. I didn't talk about my work at family gatherings. Not because I was ashamed. Because experience had taught me it didn't matter. If I said I was busy, my father heard unemployed. If I said I was stable, he heard stuck. If I said I was content, he heard lazy. So eventually I stopped explaining. From the outside, my life probably looked unremarkable. No kids, no spouse, no dramatic announcements. That alone was enough to put me on the bottom rung in my father's ranking system. My older brother, Mark, was the opposite. Golden didn't even begin to cover it. Mark followed the path my father respected. College straight out of high school. Business degree. Corporate job. Married at 28. 2 kids before 35. At every gathering, my father introduced him the same way. "This is my oldest. He did everything right." Mark didn't brag. He didn't have to. My father did it for him. Photos of Mark's family filled my parents' living room. Matching frames. Holiday cards on display year-round. Achievements mentioned casually, repeatedly. Mark just got another promotion. Mark's company flew him to Dallas. Mark's kids are already reading above grade level. No one ever asked what I was working on. When they did, my father answered for me. "She's still figuring things out," he'd say. Always been independent like that. Independent was his favorite euphemism. My mother nodded along. She always did. She wasn't cruel. She didn't insult me. She didn't raise her voice. She just disappeared when it mattered. If my father criticized me, she changed the subject. If he mocked me, she smiled nervously. If he crossed a line, she pretended not to notice. Later, sometimes she'd say quietly, "You know how he is," as if that explained anything. As if that excused it. I learned early not to ask for help. Not money, not support, not validation. When I moved out at 22, I didn't tell them I was struggling. When I switched careers at 27, I didn't ask for advice. When I started doing well, I didn't share that either. I learned to keep my life clean and private. And honestly, I liked it that way. No shouting, no comparisons, no waiting for approval that never came. That's why the reunion surprised people. From their perspective, I'd just shown up. Polite, neutral, smiling. They didn't see the years of quiet distance. They didn't see how carefully I'd built a life that didn't rely on anyone's permission. To them, I was just there. To my father, that meant available. What most of them didn't know was that I hadn't planned on staying long that day. I came because my grandmother asked me personally, because she said, "I want all my grandchildren in one place." I owed her that. I didn't come to prove anything. I didn't come to confront anyone. I didn't come with a speech prepared. I came with a folder in my bag because I was in the middle of reorganizing paperwork that week, and I didn't want to leave it in my car. That folder contained things I hadn't shown anyone yet. Documents, statements, records, things I'd spent months collecting quietly, not out of revenge, out of necessity. Because at some point, you stop asking why. Someone treats you a certain way and start asking what it's costing you. And because deep down, I'd started to understand something that made me uncomfortable. My father didn't just look down on me. He depended on me staying small. That realization didn't come all at once. It came in pieces, over time, through patterns that only made sense once I stopped defending him in my own head. The reunion wasn't the beginning. It was the moment everything he'd been doing privately finally spilled into the open. And once it did, there was no putting it back. When I look back now, I can see the pattern clearly. At the time, it never arrived all at once. It came in small, reasonable pieces, each moment easy to explain away on its own. The first time I remember feeling it, I was 13. We were sitting at the kitchen table. Report cards spread out. My grades were solid, mostly A's and B's, 1 B- in math. My father tapped the paper with his finger. "Mark never brought home anything below an A," he said. That was it. No yelling, no punishment, just a comparison that landed like a weight. When I said I wanted to try out for debate instead of soccer in high school, he frowned. "That's not really a path," he said. "You should focus on something useful." Mark had played varsity sports, so I didn't audition. When Mark got a new car at 16, my father called it an investment. When I asked to use the old family car for a part-time job, he told me I should focus on school instead of wasting time. At 17, Mark's college visits became family events, hotel stays, dinners out, long conversations about his future. When my acceptance letters came in, my father skimmed them. "State school," he said. "That's fine, I guess." I paid my own application fees, my own books, my own deposits. At the time, I told myself it was independence. Later, I realized it was separation. By the time I was in my 20s, the pattern had matured. It wasn't about control anymore. It was about framing. Whenever something went wrong in my life, my father treated it like confirmation. When a contract ended early, he shook his head. "Told you that line of work was unstable." When I moved apartments, he joked about me bouncing around again. When I said I was saving, he asked, "Saving for what exactly?" But when things went right, they barely registered. The year I doubled my income, he asked why I still rented. When I paid off a credit card, he asked why it had taken so long. When I said I was happy, he laughed and said happiness wasn't a plan. Everything good was minimized. Everything difficult was magnified. And always, always, Mark existed as the comparison point. Mark's mortgage, Mark's benefits, Mark's stability. No one ever asked if Mark was fulfilled. That didn't matter. Fulfillment wasn't the metric. Approval was. The strangest part was how calm my father stayed through all of it. He wasn't explosive. He wasn't volatile. He was consistent. He never raised his voice when he dismissed me. He never looked angry when he undermined me. That made it harder to call out. Because how do you accuse someone of harm when they're smiling? When I tried once, my mother stepped in gently. "He doesn't mean it the way you take it," she said. Another time she said, He just worries about you. When I pointed out that he never worried out loud about Mark, she went quiet. Silence was her reflex. It taught me something important. If I wanted peace, I had to carry the discomfort myself. So I stopped pushing back. I stopped correcting him when he got details wrong, stopped updating him on my work, stopped expecting acknowledgement. I started treating family interactions like transactions. Show up, smile, leave early. And for a while that worked, until money entered the picture. Not gifts, not allowances, something else. It started with small comments. My father would ask casually if I'd had a chance to look at certain forms. Or if I remembered signing something years earlier, he'd mention accounts in my name I barely remembered opening. He said it was normal, administrative, easier this way. He said he was handling things for me. At first I believed him. He'd always liked paperwork. Liked being in charge of details. But when I asked questions, he brushed them off. When I asked for copies, he said he'd get to it. When I pressed, he said I was being ungrateful. "You never trust me," he said once. After everything I've done. That sentence came up a lot. Everything he'd done. It was said like a closing argument. I noticed something else around that time. Mark never had these conversations. No forms, no signatures, no accounts handled on his behalf. Mark's finances were his own. Mine were shared, or so I was told. The more independent I became, the more my father seemed to tighten his grip in quiet ways. Not visibly, not dramatically, just enough. When I tried to access certain records, things were missing. When I asked institutions questions, responses were vague. I told myself it was bureaucracy. I told myself I was overthinking. Because the alternative, that my father benefited from me, not looking too closely, felt too heavy to consider. And yet every time he dismissed me publicly, every time he framed me as irresponsible or incapable, it fit too neatly with the way he positioned himself privately, as the responsible one, the manager, the overseer. If I was a loser, after all, then someone had to step in. That narrative served him. I didn't confront him. I didn't accuse him. I started documenting instead, quietly, carefully, not because I planned to expose him, because I needed to understand what was actually mine. The reunion invitation came while I was still in that process, while things were unfinished, while questions were unanswered. Which is why, when my father stood in front of everyone and called me a loser without hesitation, it didn't feel spontaneous. It felt strategic, like he was reinforcing a story he needed others to believe. And for the first time, I wondered what would happen if that story stopped working. The invitation to the reunion came 3 weeks earlier. Not from my father. From my grandmother. She called me on a Tuesday morning, just after 9. I remember because I was in the middle of reviewing a contract and almost let it go to voicemail. "I want everyone there," she said. "All my grandchildren. No excuses." Her voice was firm in a way it hadn't been in years. I hesitated. She noticed. "Your father will behave," she added. I told him this day isn't about him. That should have been my first warning. My grandmother had never felt the need to preemptively manage him before. When I arrived that afternoon, I felt it immediately. The energy was off. Too organized. Too intentional. The tent was already set up. Chairs arranged in rows instead of clusters. A small sound system wired to a microphone near the center. This wasn't a casual barbecue. This was staged. I found my grandmother near the house, seated and watching people arrive. She squeezed my hand when she saw me. "Stay close today," she said quietly. "Not have fun. Not enjoy yourself. Stay close." My father was already working the crowd, laughing loudly, slapping backs, retelling the same stories he always told. Stories where he was generous, hardworking, admired. He didn't acknowledge me at first. That was deliberate too. He waited until others were around before greeting me, clapping a hand on my shoulder like a proud parent might. "There you are," he said, smiling. "Didn't think you'd make it." I said nothing. My mother hugged me quickly and stepped away. Mark arrived late, as usual. When he did, my father's attention shifted instantly. Conversations paused. Jokes reset. Someone handed Mark a drink before he even asked. I stood off to the side and watched the hierarchy reassemble itself. Halfway through the afternoon, my aunt announced there would be a few words before food. My grandmother stiffened. My father stood up immediately. No discussion. No hesitation. Someone handed him the microphone. That was the moment my stomach dropped. I caught my grandmother's eye. She shook her head once. Sharp, almost angry. She hadn't known. As my father cleared his throat and the crowd settled, I felt something I hadn't felt at family events in years. Anticipation, not excitement, something colder, because I could see what he was doing. He wasn't improvising. He had chosen timing, audience, context. He'd waited until everyone was present, until attention was focused, until leaving would look dramatic. And then he spoke. The humiliation itself came fast, almost efficient. The words, the pause, the label. I watched faces change in real time. Confusion first, then recognition, then discomfort. I stayed still. That seemed to irritate him. He kept going. That's when my grandmother stood up. Not dramatically, just enough to be noticed. He didn't see her at first. She waited until he lifted the bottle, until he thought he'd finished. Then she said my name, once, clear, controlled. The microphone picked it up. Every head turned. My father frowned, annoyed at the interruption. "What?" he asked. She didn't answer him. She looked at me instead, and in that look there was apology, regret, and something else I hadn't seen before, resolve. She took a step forward. My father shifted uncomfortably. "Sit down, Mom," he said, half joking. "I'm just speaking honestly." "That's what worries me," she replied. The crowd stilled. Even the kids stopped moving. My grandmother gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. "You've been very comfortable telling this story," she said. "About who succeeded and who didn't." My father smiled tightly. "Well, facts are facts." She nodded slowly. "Then facts should be shared carefully." My heart started pounding, because I realized something in that moment. This wasn't just about me. She knew. Not everything. But enough. Enough to know he was crossing a line he wouldn't be able to step back over. My father laughed lightly, trying to regain control. "This isn't the time," he said. "We're celebrating family." My grandmother looked around the yard, at the tent, the chairs, the microphone. "Then perhaps," she said, "we should stop pretending this was spontaneous." The silence after that was heavier than the insult had been. I felt the folder in my bag again. The weight of it suddenly very real. I hadn't planned to speak. I hadn't planned to confront him. But watching my grandmother stand there, unsteady, exposed, still willing to interrupt him, shifted something in me. Because if she was willing to break the silence she'd kept for decades, then I didn't get to hide behind it anymore. My father turned back toward the crowd, clearly irritated. "Anyway," he said, lifting the microphone again. "That's when I realized something else. He was going to push harder. He wasn't finished. And if I let him keep going, he would define me in front of everyone who mattered before I ever said a word." I took one step forward. Just one, and the sound of my shoe against. The grass was loud enough that my father stopped mid-sentence. When I stepped forward, my father paused. Not because he respected the interruption, because he was surprised. He hadn't accounted for movement from me. He adjusted the microphone and smiled like a man humoring a child. "I'm not done," he said. I stopped a few feet away, close enough to be seen, far enough not to look confrontational. I said nothing. That seemed to bother him more than if I had. He turned back to the crowd. "As I was saying," he continued, "success isn't complicated. You work hard. You commit. You don't drift." A few people shifted again. The mood had changed. This wasn't a toast anymore. It was a lecture. He gestured vaguely in my direction. "Some people just never learn that." Silence. No one laughed this time. My mother finally looked up. Her face was tight. Her hands clasped together so hard her knuckles had gone white. My brother stared straight ahead. My father noticed. He leaned into the microphone. "I'm saying this because I care," he said. "Because sometimes honesty is the only thing that gets through." He glanced at me again, sharper now. "You can't coddle failure." The word landed harder than the first one. Failure? I felt heat behind my eyes, but no urge to cry. Just a deep, steady pressure in my chest. Around us, people had stopped pretending to eat. Plates sat untouched. Drinks forgotten. This wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was wrong. My grandmother took another step forward. My father saw her this time. "Mom," he warned. She didn't stop. "I think that's enough," she said. He laughed, short and dismissive. "You always did have a soft spot." Her jaw tightened. "This isn't softness," she replied. "This is decency." He turned back to the crowd, waving a hand. "She's always been sensitive about this one," he said. "But facts are facts." That was the moment something inside me went quiet. Not numb, focused. I realized he wasn't embarrassed. He was enjoying this. enjoying the attention, enjoying the authority, enjoying the fact that no one was stopping him. So I did something small. I raised my hand. Not dramatically, not high, just enough. A few people noticed. Whispers rippled. My father frowned. "What?" he snapped. I spoke calmly. "If you're going to talk about me," I said, "you should at least be accurate." The crowd froze. My father stared at me, then laughed. "This isn't a debate," he said. "This is family." I nodded. Exactly. That wiped the smile off his face. He stepped toward me slightly, microphone still in hand. "You've always been defensive," he said. "That's part of the problem." I didn't raise my voice. "I haven't said anything yet." Someone near the back murmured something I couldn't make out. My father tightened his grip on the mic. "You want to say something?" he asked. "Go ahead. Enlighten us." The challenge hung in the air. Everyone was watching now. My grandmother's eyes flicked to my bag. She knew. My mother shook her head almost imperceptibly. I didn't look at her. I looked at my father. "I didn't come here to embarrass you," I said. "But you didn't give me a choice." He scoffed. "Oh, please." I reached into my bag. Slowly, deliberately. The sound of the zipper was loud in the silence. My father's expression changed. Just slightly. I pulled out the folder. Thick, worn at the edges. "What's that?" he demanded. "Context," I said. A few people leaned forward. My father laughed again, but it was thinner now. "This is ridiculous," he said. "Put that away." I didn't. I opened the folder. I didn't read anything yet. I just let the papers be seen. Bank letterhead, official stamps, names, my name. My father took a step back. "Now is not the time," he said sharply. "That's what you said to Grandma," I replied. The air felt electric, like everyone was holding their breath at once. My father looked around, trying to regain control. "This is a family gathering," he insisted. "You're making a scene." I tilted my head slightly. "You handed me the microphone first," I said. Someone near the table gasped quietly. My father opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time that day, he didn't know what to say. I turned to the crowd. "I'm not here to argue," I said. "I'm here because I was invited, and because I was just called a loser in front of everyone I grew up with." No one interrupted me. "I've been quiet for a long time," I continued. "But silence only works when the truth doesn't matter." My father shook his head, muttering something under his breath. I looked back at him. "You've told this story for years," I said. "About who I am, about what I've done, about what I deserve." I paused. "And none of it explains why my name is on accounts I never opened." The reaction was immediate. People stiffened. Whispers broke out. Someone said, "What?" My father's face drained of color. "That's not," he started. I held up a hand. "Don't," I said quietly. "Not yet." The silence that followed was absolute. I hadn't even shown them anything. And already the story was cracking. I looked at my grandmother. She nodded once. Then I looked back at the crowd. "There's a lot you don't know," I said. And a lot I didn't know either. Until recently, my father lunged for the microphone. My grandmother stepped between us. "Sit down," she said. He didn't. She raised her voice. "For once in your life," she said, "sit down." He froze. And in that moment, with 43 people watching and my father unable to move, I realized this wasn't just about humiliation anymore. It was about exposure. And once that door opened, there was no closing it. My father was still holding the microphone. But no one was listening to him anymore. All eyes had shifted to the folder in my hands. That alone changed everything. I didn't rush. I didn't dramatize it. I did what he had never expected me to do. I stayed calm. "I didn't find this out all at once," I said, my voice steady. "And I didn't come here to accuse anyone without facts." My father laughed sharply, trying to break the tension. "This is absurd," he said. "You're confused. You've always been confused about paperwork." No one laughed with him. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. A bank statement, dated March 14th, 2016. "I was 25, I said, living in a different state. No joint accounts, no power of attorney." I held the paper up so people could see the letterhead. "This account was opened in my name." My father shook his head. "That was for your benefit," he said quickly. "You asked me to help manage things." I looked at him. "I never signed this." I turned the page. "This account overdrafted 17 times in 2 years," I continued. Each overdraft fee was charged to me. Not you. A murmur ran through the crowd. My aunt leaned forward. My uncle frowned. I flipped to another page. Here's another account. Opened August 3rd, 2018. Closed 6 months later. Balance transferred out. I looked directly at my father. Transferred to an account in your name. My father stepped toward me. Stop, he said. You're misunderstanding. I didn't raise my voice. I called the bank, I said. They confirmed it. I requested the access logs. I held up another sheet. Your email. Your phone number. Your IP address. That's when his confidence cracked. Just slightly. He turned toward my mother. Tell them, he said. You knew about this. She didn't move. Didn't speak. That silence was louder than anything he'd said all day. I kept going. This wasn't a one-time mistake, I said. It was a pattern. I laid the documents out on the table one by one. Dates, balances, fees. By the time I caught it, I continued, my credit score had dropped 93 points. Someone gasped. My brother finally turned and looked at my father. What? He asked. My father's jaw tightened. That was temporary, he snapped. It was handled. It wasn't, I replied. Not for me. I pulled out another page. Tax correspondence. This letter is from the IRS, I said. Dated September 20, 2021. It says income was reported under my Social Security number that I never received. My father raised his voice. That was a clerical issue. It was $4,600, I said. Silence. Not a cough. Not a shuffle. 43 people standing perfectly still. I hired a professional to review everything. I continued. Not a lawyer. Not at first. I glanced at my grandmother. An accountant. I held up the report. He found discrepancies going back 7 years. My father took another step back. This is private, he said. You're exposing family business. I nodded. You made it public. I turned to the crowd again. I want to be clear, I said. I'm not saying this to humiliate anyone. I'm saying it because I was labeled a failure based on damage I didn't cause. My aunt covered her mouth. My cousin whispered, Oh my God. My brother shook his head slowly, like he was trying to wake up. My father tried a different angle. She didn't understand what she was signing, he said. She trusted me. I met his eyes. I never signed. That was the line he couldn't cross. Because it wasn't interpretation. It was fact. I reached the last section of the folder. Legal correspondence. I consulted an attorney last month, I said. Not to sue, to understand my exposure. I paused. And to stop it. My father's voice dropped. You went behind my back. I tilted my head slightly. You went behind my name. That landed. Hard. My grandmother stepped forward again. How long? She asked him. He didn't answer. How long have you been doing this? She repeated. He opened his mouth. Closed it. She looked at me. Is this everything? No, I said. It's what I could document. She nodded once. Then she turned back to her son. You've been telling us she couldn't manage her life, she said quietly. While you were managing it for her, my father snapped. I was helping. You were hiding, she replied. The words cut cleanly. My father looked around, searching for support. None came. My brother finally spoke. Did you do this to me? He asked. My father's silence answered him. The realization spread through the group. This wasn't favoritism. It was utility. I closed the folder. I didn't come here for revenge, I said. I came because I was tired of being defined by damage I didn't do. I met my father's eyes one last time. You needed me to look irresponsible, I said. So no one would ask why you had access. He said nothing. For the first time in my life, he had no story ready. The power in the yard had shifted. Not loudly, irreversibly. And as people stepped back, whispering, processing, reassessing, I realized something that made my hands shake slightly. This still wasn't the worst thing he'd done, because there was one truth I hadn't said yet. One thing that explained everything. And once it came out, there would be no pretending this was just about money. The reason I didn't say it right away was simple. Once you say something like this out loud, it can't be folded back into silence. And silence had been the foundation of my childhood. My grandmother was the one who broke it. She looked at the closed folder, then at me. You found out, didn't you? She said. It wasn't a question. The yard felt smaller suddenly, like the air had been pulled tight around us. My father's head snapped up. What are you talking about? He said sharply. My grandmother didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on me. How long have you known? She asked. I swallowed once. About a year, I said. The reaction wasn't immediate. People didn't gasp or shout. They leaned in, instinctively. My father laughed too loudly. This is ridiculous, he said. You're letting her imagination run wild. My grandmother's voice didn't rise. You told me it was handled, she said. You told me she'd never need to know. That did it. Every head turned toward my father. My mother's face drained of color. What is she talking about? My brother asked. My father stepped forward. Enough, he said. This is private. This has nothing to do with... It has everything to do with it, my grandmother cut in. She looked tired. Not old, tired. You treated her like an outsider, she said. Because that's how you saw her. My chest tightened. I took a breath. When I started untangling the accounts, I said, I ordered a full credit report, then a background check. I needed to know what else was attached to my name. I paused. That's when I noticed something missing. I held the room without raising my voice. There was no record of my father legally claiming me. The words didn't land right away. People blinked. My brother frowned. What does that mean? He asked. It meant everything. There was no adoption paperwork, I said. No amended birth certificate. No legal acknowledgement filed when I was born. My father exploded. That's a lie. My grandmother turned to him slowly. No, she said. It isn't. The silence this time was violent. My mother made a small sound. Not a word, just breath leaving her lungs too fast. My brother stared at me. You're saying, he began, then stopped. I nodded. My father raised me, I said. But legally he was never my father. Someone whispered, oh my God. My grandmother closed her eyes briefly. You promised, she said to him. You said you'd make it right. My father shook his head wildly. This doesn't matter, he said. Blood doesn't matter. I was there. I met his gaze. Then why didn't you sign the papers? That question hung there. He had no answer. Because the truth was uglier than neglect. I wasn't an accident. I was leverage. My mother had been pregnant when she married him. Not with his child. He agreed to raise me on one condition, that my biological father's name never appear, that no adoption ever be finalized. That legally, I stayed flexible. It was complicated, my father muttered. I did what I had to do. What you had to do, my grandmother repeated softly, was protect your reputation. Not me. Him. That explained everything. The distance. The control. The accounts. The way he spoke about me like I was temporary. If I wasn't fully his, then neither was the responsibility. And if my name stayed legally unanchored, it was easier to use. My brother backed away a step. You used her, he said. My father rounded on him. I raised her. You exploited her, my grandmother corrected. The family fractured in real time. Sides weren't chosen loudly. They were chosen by who stepped away from my father and who didn't. My mother finally spoke. Her voice was barely audible. You said this was settled, she whispered. He didn't look at her. Sit down, he said. She didn't. For the first time I could remember, she stayed standing. I believed you, she said. My father looked smaller now. Not defeated. Exposed. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief. Understanding. I wasn't defective. I wasn't disappointing. I was inconvenient. And once that truth existed in the open, there was no repairing the image he'd built for decades. My grandmother straightened. This family, she said, will not carry your secrets for you anymore. She turned to me. You deserved honesty, she said, and protection. Then she turned back to her son. And you will face the consequences of choosing control over decency. No one argued, because there was nothing left to defend. No one told my father to leave. That was the worst part for him. There was no shouting, no dramatic expulsion, no raised voices demanding accountability. People simply moved. Chairs shifted away from him. Conversations reorganized themselves without him. The invisible center of the gathering relocated, and he was no longer in it. My grandmother was the one who made it official. She asked for the microphone. Not from him. From my aunt. When she spoke, she didn't look angry. She looked finished. I'm 91 years old, she said. I don't have time left for pretending. She paused, letting the words settle. This family does not reward cruelty, she continued. And it does not protect it. She turned slightly, not fully facing her son. "What you've done will be addressed properly," she said. "Legally and financially. You will not speak for this family again." My father scoffed. "You can't just decide that." She met his eyes. "I already have." She gestured toward the house. "The accounts tied to my estate," she said, "are being audited. Effective immediately." That was the moment his face truly changed. Not when I spoke. Not when the documents came out. Not even when the truth about my birth surfaced. This was different. This threatened his access. My uncle cleared his throat. "I'll help coordinate," he said. "I've already spoken to the attorney." My aunt nodded. "So have I." One by one, people stepped forward. Not to attack him. To remove themselves from him. My brother stood near me now. Not touching. Just close. "I need space," he said to our father. "Until I understand what else you lied about." My father turned to my mother. She looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "I'm staying with my sister tonight." It wasn't dramatic. It was decisive. My father laughed bitterly. "You're all overreacting," he said. "This will blow over." No one answered. Because everyone knew it wouldn't. I didn't add anything. I didn't need to. My role was done. I gathered my folder and slid it back into my bag. As I did, my grandmother reached for my hand. Her grip was firm. "You won't handle this alone," she said quietly. "Not anymore." I nodded. That was enough. The reunion didn't end abruptly. Food was served. Conversations restarted, softer now. People avoided one corner of the yard. My father stood there for a while, watching, waiting for someone to re-engage him. No one did. Eventually he left. No announcement. No goodbye. Just the sound of a car door closing somewhere down the street. The justice wasn't loud. It was structural. Accounts frozen. Authority removed. Narratives corrected. Over the next weeks, things moved quickly. The accountant expanded the review. The attorney formalized boundaries. Access was revoked where it never should have existed. I cooperated. Professionally. Emotionally neutral. Not because I was detached. Because I was done carrying his chaos inside me. I didn't pursue punishment beyond what was necessary. I pursued clarity. And clarity changed everything. Life didn't transform overnight. There was no montage. No dramatic leap forward. Just a gradual return to stability that felt unfamiliar at first. Like learning to walk without bracing for impact. The legal work took months. Accounts were untangled. Balances corrected. My credit report cleaned line by line. The 93 points I'd lost came back slowly. Then more. For the first time, my name meant exactly one thing. Mine. I didn't talk to my father. Not because I was angry, because there was nothing left to explain. When people asked if I felt relieved, I struggled to answer. Relief implies pressure being removed. This felt more like weight being redistributed to where it belonged. My grandmother stayed involved. She insisted on transparency, on updates, on making sure nothing like this could happen again, to me or to anyone else in the family. She amended her estate plans, not as punishment, as protection. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. What mattered was the intent. My relationship with my mother changed in smaller ways. She apologized once. Not publicly, not elaborately. Just once. "I should have asked more questions," she said. I believed her. We're still learning what honesty looks like between us. My brother called me a week later. "I didn't see it," he said. And I should have. We're rebuilding something new, slower, realer. As for me, the quiet I'd built before finally felt earned. I bought a place the following spring. Nothing extravagant, just mine, keys in my own hand, deed in my own name. The first night I slept there, I realized something strange. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. That had never happened before. I kept working, took better contracts, set firmer boundaries, not just with family, with everyone. When people tried to define me, I corrected them calmly. When they didn't listen, I walked away. I stopped explaining my life to people committed to misunderstanding it. The word loser stopped echoing somewhere along the way. Not because it was disproven, because it was irrelevant. I learned something important through all of this. Abuse doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it introduces itself as authority, as management, as help, and silence doesn't keep the peace. It just decides who absorbs the damage. I didn't reclaim my voice by yelling. I reclaimed it by documenting, by understanding, by refusing to carry someone else's lies as my identity. The last time I saw my father was at a distance, a family function he attended briefly. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. He looked smaller, not diminished. just stripped of the story that once protected him. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. Finished explaining. Finished absorbing. Finished being defined. I used to think strength looked like endurance. Now I know it looks like choice. Choosing clarity over comfort. Choosing truth over tradition. Choosing yourself even when the cost is high. Because sometimes the moment you stop being the loser in someone else's story is the moment you finally get to write your own.